talk about it, I think.
Well, we're officially back. This is television, it's not Twitter, so we have not been banned.
Thankfully.
Yeah. What? Oh, okay. I thought it was ladies first. Well, welcome. This is, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the show. The first one, of course, we are looking at is this matter of constitution review. But it will be remiss of us to not talk about, what's going on, really on Twitter. We have three people on our panel this morning. Ayobe joins us. She's a legal practitioner. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Morning.
And as well as John Oloyede, also a legal practitioner. Thank you very much. And Kola Oludare, a legal practitioner and Deputy Director, Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, also joins us this morning. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So let me, first of all, say ladies first, so I got to honor that.
We're all gentlemen at the bar. Don't go there.
It's all gentlemen at the bar.
Exactly.
So only men drink. Okay, just this thing, this Twitter ban by the federal government. First of all, how did that hit you?
Well, as I was saying, I couldn't tell my 6 fans that I'm going to be on television this morning because I was sending out the tweet to them. I mean, am I supposed to now start sending individual SMSs? So it hit me directly. And I think actually that's the point, because we've been talking about this as if it's a big macro something. But the real point of it is that it allows an individual like me to get my message out to the world at large, or to the 3 people that want to follow me or look at my tweet. And that's really how, so we should all understand it as something that affects us in our individual space. It's not a matter of the president did this, didn't do that, and all the rest of it. But we individuals are all going to, if we use Twitter, we are all going to be affected. I have to say that it surprised me how many of my friends don't use Twitter, are not interested in Twitter. They may have Twitter accounts, but those of us, I mean, for me, it's my primary mode of communicating with the world at large. And the reason why I like it more than all the other platforms is you put your nonsense out there, somebody will come back at you with the facts. And whereas, when you're in your WhatsApp group and your little secrets, you think everything is... But by the time what sounded good in your echo chamber, you present it to the world with your tweet, then the facts will come back. And I think actually that on a more general note, I think that the Ministry of Information basically is admitting failure by saying we can't answer the issues that arise on Twitter, and therefore this is how we will control it. And the fact is that we should understand that it's not just Twitter, it's all the, as they say, over-the-top media. That is the media that don't go through gatekeepers like you guys at channels. So it's not just Twitter that is in the sights of the federal government. Any lawyer will see both sides of the argument. Let's understand it. I mean, the other day we had somebody died of natural causes. The news was all over that the person had been assassinated, but it did not come from Twitter. There's something attributed to the Attorney General. So there are always going to be stories that need to be corrected. Yeah. And the question is that, are you going to say that, well, because we can hold the necks of certain media outlets, our job is less, we don't have to do so much work, because that's how it comes across.
Okay, all right, John. Some are talking about human rights violation in this case. How do you see it?
Well, I'm not looking at it from just such a narrow perspective. Yes, like Ms. Obe said, it's about my right as an individual to have a voice.
So
out
that's
there.
human rights.
Yes, that's human.
Your basic human right.
I should have a voice.
Yes.
But even though the law allows me to speak out, and dish out my opinion out there,
Sorosoke.
Exactly, Sorosoke. It doesn't allow me to dish out this information.
Okay.
Now, so where my rights end, the rights of other people begin. So to that extent, I don't want to look at it that way. I want to look at it from a bigger perspective. You know, the Nigerian youths, the government is not saying this from the angle of the psychological well-being of people. For as long as individuals can speak up, for as long as they can speak their rubbish out there, what government considers to be rubbish, I mean, we can maintain some form of sanity. But the moment you bottle people up, there's a lot of tension.
Yeah.
And then we're sitting on a keg of gunpowder, because when the bubble bursts, it's not going to be about my individual rights. It can generate a lot of, the backlash is not something that the government may be able to handle. So it's not about human rights, individual rights alone. It's about just allowing people to speak up. Nigerians are under a lot of pressure. We're facing a lot at the same time. Things are coming at us. They are being thrown at us. The economy is bad. No jobs. The food prices are going up. Yesterday I was talking to my wife, and she just sat down there. You know, I took the chicken, and as I was chewing, said, things have really become so expensive. And when she mentioned the price, and it's like, so I'm actually swallowing money right now. and I had no choice. I quickly did a transfer. Things are so bad. And the least the government can do is to allow Nigerians to socialize, to vent.
Yes.
And so it's not just about, it's about our psychological well-being.
So do I,
Of course, it's the same thing, like you said, about those individual rights. Yeah, they can be aggregated in terms of sections of constitutions, but the way it impacts on everyone is different. So there are people who are making money from Twitter, for instance. There are people that vent. There are people that rant. There are people doing a lot of things. Like, for instance, Serap, we do a lot of advocacy on that platform. Even from the government side, they issue statements from time to time.
Even the
so
ban
some
was
people's
announced.
employment has been terminated.
Yes,
in other
yes.
words,
Business.
It's economic, yes. So it's psychological, it's economic, it's just all too large. And then the right to socialize. People come there to socialize.
Yes.
So I think it is well thought out, I must say. I don't think this is a knee-jerk reaction, but it's just not right. Not in any way you want to look at it.
And one of the things that I also see on Twitter is that people actually reach out and do personal social responsibilities. People drop your account number if you're broke, and people, you know, continue to do that. They send out a lot of my. I have one a thread. Maybe I'll share that with you later. But is that, for what reason really is Serap decided? Is Serap going to court on this matter? Because the NBA is also saying that if this is not resolved, they're also going to go to court.
It's just to protect the rights of Nigerians. That is what it's about.
But you know that the federal government has been talking about this for a while. You know that the social media being so unregulated is very, very dangerous to national security.
We've seen this coming, by the way. That's why we had put out a tweet, I think, during the week when Mr. Lai Mohammed had come out about what Twitter had done. We had put out a tweet that we're going to resist that through legal means. So we were not surprised this came at this time. It's about protecting the rights of Nigerians. That right not only to impart ideas, but also to receive. And like we've mentioned, is a marketplace of many things, socioeconomic rights, ventures, and all that. So it's just to ensure that space is protected. And when we talk of sacred space, social media is a very important component of that part right now. And I think traditionally people are yet to get that point. And I use people in this sense to mean the people in government, to understand that this is a new trend. This is somewhere to be protected, not regulated in the sense which we've seen the government do time and again. And that is why we really want to go to court to protect that right.
Well, madam, the issues are not just going to go away. We can't wish the issues away. They are as real as can be. Question that I want to ask is, Mr. Luadare says, you know, he believes that the idea of suspending the activities of Twitter in Nigeria is well thought out. But in terms of the number of people, especially the primary catchments of people that it affects directly, being the youth, What kind of reaction do you think this might generate?
You can't turn to me and ask me to talk about how the youth, because I actually did discuss this even in my own household. I don't qualify as a youth. I've never qualified as a youth. So I think that, but when he said well thought out, he didn't mean that it was well. He said that he meant that they had been planning this. That it had been planned.
Knee-jerk reaction.
Yes, I think that. So I don't think you should, because sometimes when oh, this is very well thought out, it's complimentary. I don't think that's.
But in this case, it is a complimentary.
He's not being complimentary. He's just saying that they've been planning this for a long time. But I mean, because I had the misfortune of not having read the offending tweet that was deleted. And so I was, and I had seen the president talking on to the INEC commissioners when they complained about their polling stations being attacked and so on. And I understood him to be saying that, look, this kind of thing can lead to trouble. And those of us who went through a war, a civil war, don't want to see that again. And that's why we are going to come down hard on those. So that's how I understood it. But others said that, look, from the perspective of somebody who perhaps sees the Nigerian civil war as a form of genocide, that it would have been better if I could put myself, if I could transpose it. You always lose the argument once you mention the Nazis, I have to say. But the argument was that if the Nazis had remained in power in one way or the other, and then some Jewish people had broken the law, and then the people who had been Nazis now came out and said, we are going to deal with these Jewish people in the way that they understand. You would, because to me, I think that we tend to jump to the word genocide very carelessly and easily. But it was put to me, it's not a perfect analogy, but that is how the context of the tweet itself being offending was seen. And I think that I tried to understand the thing. As I say, I argued and said that, well, but to me, that wasn't how I saw it. But there are different ways of interpreting. And as I said, to me, I think the essential thing is that whether you are a youth or whether you are an elderly person like me, what you're entitled to expect from your government is that when they see laws being broken, then they should take up the breaking of those laws, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's attacking INEC stations or so on. But you shouldn't let it look as though you are actually having a petty reaction to
which is
your
perhaps,
own tweet being deleted.
Which is perhaps the issue. But is that really what it is? And I'm still very concerned about how Nigerians are taking this already, because Twitter literally went on fire yesterday. We'll take more of that on when we return from this break. Stay with us.
Yes.
The jury is out there on what aspects of the Constitution to look at. Do you think, I mean, I'm just going to ask you the way it's coming to me. Do you think there's any correlation between this Twitter ban and Constitution review?
I honestly don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, with all due respect, I don't think so. I think the issue of the politicians are moving around all over the country now in the name of constitutional review process. And, we've gone through this lane before. And it's unfortunate that every time elections are looming, the politicians find a way to give us this breathing space momentarily, so that before the elections, they promise and they tell us, look, we cannot consummate this constitutional review. The problem is, the provisions of the Constitution, are they the kind of provisions that envisage an amendment to the Constitution? Even the Constitution itself does not talk about amendment. It talks about alteration. Now, when you look at the provisions
Sorry, John. What is the difference between an alteration and an amendment?
I'm a lawyer, but I honestly don't know why in a constitution, the word amendment was not used. It talks about alteration, and all over every time, particularly election matters, it seems the issue of alteration affects only election matters. When we go for these election cases, you see alteration to the constitution number 1, alteration to constitution number 2, number 3. There have been so many alterations to the constitution in respect of election matters. But there have been no alteration to the constitution in respect of fiscal federalism, for instance, revenue sharing.
Yes.
There are no alterations to the human rights provisions in the constitution. And now, so when you look at it, the politician, the people keep saying the constitution as it is not really amendable, because the provisions relating to amendment of the constitution, they are so onerous, so difficult to apply. Because when you talk in terms of, first of all, there's a section, I think section 9(1) of the constitution talks about amending the provision relating to the conditions under which you can amend. It talks about 4/5 of members in the federal houses, the 2 houses, and then you take it back to the state houses. 2/3 before you go to the president for his assent. Now, it is basically impossible for that particular provision to be amended. Then when you talk in terms of amending some other provisions of the constitution, you talk about 2/3 in the federal houses, the 2 houses, and then you go to the states. And then when you go to boundary adjustment, of course, that's another case entirely. So when you look at it, the constitution has been so framed in a way and manner that there can be no amendment under the current dispensation, given the number of states we have, given the number.
Wait, Mr. Olwede.
Yes.
Are you saying that this is just a jamboree? Okay, let me on the issue of amendment or alteration. The simple Google search, the meaning of the word amend.
Yeah.
1, make minor changes to a piece of legislation, minor changes, in order to make it fairer or more accurate, or to reflect changing circumstances. That's the meaning of amend. I don't know whether there is a different meaning in law, but that's English, which is my own tool of trade.
I adopt that.
And then alter, change in character or composition, typically in a comparatively small but significant way. So which one is the Constitution talking about? Yes, I mean, I read that part as well. That says alter, as opposed to amend.
Look, what I'm saying is this. What is so difficult in saying, everybody talks about amending the Constitution, but the provision that you see, the word in the Constitution is alteration.
Not
and there, for the purpose of interpreting a word or a provision, you can have as many interpretations as there are lawyers. You understand? The way I see it is this. If we want to amend a constitution, it's like there's a deliberate effort to run away from amending the constitution. And I'm saying the provisions, a lot of people have alleged that this constitution, is a fraudulent document, nobody adopted it, it's not our own constitution. That's all we have right now.
And that's what we work with.
The minimum we can do is to allow for a proper amendment to take care of changing circumstances.
Okay. Kola, some have actually said, it's not our document at all. We don't know anything about it. So why don't we just jettison it and then go about putting our own constitution together? We the people of Nigeria.
When you say some people, I'm inclined to think there are political undertones. So I think it's not that encouragable, really. And taking off from where he stopped about alteration or amendment, looking at Section 9 and reading it all the way from the beginning to the end, there appears to be a deliberate attempt not to make amending or altering the constitution easy.
Possible.
But I wouldn't easy. I would use the word easy.
Okay.
Now, as to the motive for doing that, I wouldn't know. But it is curable, and that is seen from the various aspects, from the various issues that people have raised that is wrong with the constitution. It's not. We need not trash it as it is. But for instance, to put it in context, Section 9 that deals with alteration or amendments, that has been argued, gives a very difficult task to amend the constitution. That's section 9.1. But section 9.5, subsection 5, now says to amend that particular section 9. Now, it creates another provision for amending that section itself, and that is the forfeit you referred to.
Yes.
And so it makes it so, it's saying, section 9 is saying before you amend, it goes through that rigorous process of two-thirds of the State of House of Assembly. And it now says that to even amend section 9, you still need 4/5 of both houses. So we can see that it's meant not to be easy, but I think it's something that can still be done. And from our own perspective at SERAP, we can peel through the various layers of politics and various agitations from all sides. To us, it's about socioeconomic rights and transparency and accountability.
Let me ask you this before we let it go from there. There is also the argument, I think Mr. Oloyede referenced it in a way, that there is unnecessary over-politicization of the issues. How can the people take ownership of the process? Because it was on the floor of the Senate that a senator said that the Constitution, as we have it, is so, I don't know, is the word fraudulent?
Fraudulent.
That, it cannot give us the kind of development that we need. And he made some references. Now, but how do the people take ownership of the process, irrespective of any political leaning, so that it can indeed give what you said, socio-economic rights to the people?
I think it's going to be a bit difficult, and you've said it all. That is what we need to do, and that is why you see our advocacy is consistently about socio-economic rights and transparency and accountability. But the historical context of Nigeria itself and the various issues of constitution, not even the 1990 constitution, shows the elements of politics, tribe, religion also coming into play. So we need to peel off all those layers and stick to the fundamentals. For instance, to give you context, if we have state control, devolution of powers, for instance, does that mean we are not going to have transparency and accountability mechanisms to ensure even the states that control resources now are accountable? And that is why we think Nigerians need to focus and leave the politics and the tribe and all those other issues. Let us focus on these issues so that even if the states do have a police, for instance, how can we make them accountable? If the states have the derivation and the control their resources, how can we make them accountable? That's very important.
Okay, Ayo, taking it from where he just
Which
left
Ayo?
off.
Please, if you have paid rent, you can ask my Yes, my dear.
Okay, I will specify. Ayo Obe.
Oh, okay.
Now, he spoke about the people taking possession of this. I'm sure that you followed the review panels across the country during the week. And I saw in one state where one of the officials was pointing to the hall. As you can see, the hall is completely empty. There's nobody here. So who are the people who are going to take possession of this and make meaningful contributions to it?
Those who are interested in making those contributions. And let's be clear that here in the southwest in Lagos, there was an attempt. People were interested. People did turn up.
They turned up, yes.
And one of them had a very uncharitable reaction. And from the chair of the Senate subcommittee that was conducting the public hearing here in Lagos. And I think that, to my mind, rather exposed the sort of choreographed nature of the public hearings. Because if you say you want the public to come and make submissions, although I have to emphasize, and really Nigerians should take this on board, this is not the fact that you didn't get in at the public hearing does not mean to say you don't have a voice in the amendment of the Constitution, and should not allow the Senate to say that, well, we held a public hearing and now the public must keep quiet. You always have the right to contact your legislator and tell them what you think and what you want, what your proposals are, and so on. But nonetheless, having gone through it made it seem like a charade that we have to have a public hearing, so we tick that box and we have the public hearing, but we only want certain type of public to appear. And I feel that was a very unfortunate and unnecessary, because it didn't even allow us to go along with the charade. I mean, some of us were thinking, oh yes, that definitely people who are interested are going to go and they're going to make their position, they're going to come, this is the list, and so on and so forth. Or they're going to say, my position is always that you either are going to do this piecemeal, as we have been doing. So that the one we had, the constitution we had in 1999, is not the one we have now because it has been altered. I don't know whether they chose altered or alteration because they don't want us to look like Americans who have the Fifth Amendment, the 12th Amendment. We have alteration here in Nigeria because we are...
So we can have fifth alteration, first
Or
alteration.
or it may simply be that statutes, ordinary laws are amended. We want to have a different terminology for... But it's a semantic difference rather than a qualitative difference. You change it, you can change it big, or you can change it small. We've been changing it small. We've been doing these piecemeal ones. We remember the last one, the fourth alteration, where we had the not too young to run and all these other ones. Or you can go big. Now, we remember that during the time of President Jonathan, he tried to go big. He had a constitution review panel. He brought the best, well, I wasn't there myself, but he brought the best minds to discuss the review of the Constitution. And I felt that they really did, of course they had the politicians, but they also had people who had expertise, whether it was in medicine, in law, in engineering and economics and so on. And so I felt that this was a very good attempt and they came out with a report. But what did we do? Some of that report required actual amendment of the Constitution. Some of it required statutes to be changed, amendment of statutes. And some of it just required the president to take out his pen and write. Not any of those happened. So we had, and in fact, all we heard from our media was 54 states, are they crazy? And so we focused on that aspect where there were so many other things that were discussed and that came out of that report, but none of it, not one comma, was acted on. So I think that when you say who are the people, we've had the people during the time of Babangida, the political bureau went round and the people said we want a welfarist, socialist type of state. Babangida said, that's not happening here. And we had the people when we had the Constituent Assembly. We had the Jonathan Constituent Assembly. So we've had the people in different guises. But at the end of the day, the cherry picking about what we want to do is done by those who we have elected. The senator who talks about this is not the Constitution, is that the platform on which he ran for election? That this Constitution is not proper, if I get to the Senate, I'm going to amend it? Is there any political party which is running on that Nigerians voted for? Or did we say, Constitution matter, but the bread and butter? So really, when you talk about whether it is, whether the people are interested, it's a good question, but the people may not be interested, but it's an important thing that is going to affect all of us.
Quite honestly, I mean, if I see what goes on Twitter, Twitter. People are interested. The question is, there's a question you asked about how the people can get involved in the process. I think we should take that on when we return from this break. Do stay with us. Well, thanks for staying with us. Well, I have a tweet here. It says, good morning, Alero. Hope you can read my tweet. God bless, my dear Nigeria. just for you. Well, Mr. Olede, we were talking about the people and eloquently put together by Ms. B. The question then would be, how do the people get involved in the process? Do you see an avenue? Because to a large extent, I don't know if you feel the same way, but what one can read is that the trust deficit between the people and those they employed. I like to use the word employed because that's exactly what happened. The people employed leaders into office to work for them. Now, it would seem like the trust deficit between the people that employed people into government and the people they employed has greatly depleted. So how then do the people come into this constitution review process to make any meaningful alteration or contribution to the alteration or amendment, whichever one you prefer.
In answering the question, I'll take the baton from Mrs. Obi. She had said that over the years, Nigerian people had been involved in this constitution amendment matter. Over the years, different processes truncated at different times. There was the Constituent Assembly, the one by Jonathan, the one by Babangida, and the people...
There was one by Obasanjo as well.
Yes, the one by Obasanjo. And the people turned out in full numbers to participate in all these processes, and nothing came of them. Now, there's something that I'll call people fatigue, just like you have donor fatigue. The Nigerian people are tired of starting a process that never seems to end. There is total disconnect. There's no trust between the people and those that lead us. That's why, this one, you have, I think they have an agency, National Orientation Agency. How many Nigerians actually are aware of the fact that the subcommittee came to Lagos to give an opportunity for people to come and talk? When it is time to, we now depend on SERAP, other individual agent, private concerns to know what is going on, to agitate on behalf of the people, to test laws, and to tell the government to truncate some very draconian moves by government. Because the so-called agencies, like the government itself complained that, look, all these agencies are there, we're paying so much salary, too much overhead, and that we're scrapping them. None of them have been scrapped. The National Orientation Agency has had a role to play in all this. Educating Nigerians, enlightening us, telling us that, look, so-so committee is visiting so-so state on so-so date. Did they do that? The next day, or on social media, that the government is now closing down. That's where most of us learn of the fact that, they visited Lagos and a big politician was fighting another, a smaller politician on the issue of thuggery. So what else can the people do? Are you talking of Nigerians who are scavenging, who just want to survive, who are now, we're all hustlers now. You see, we have changed the language is now, God bless my hustle. I see that every time on social media. All Nigerians are now hustling. And so, how do you expect a man who is hustling and who is not sure of coming back home from his hustle on a daily basis, how do you expect him to get interested in discussing about constitutional amendment that will lead to nowhere? After the elections, we are all sure that we'll be back to square one. We'll get on the march again. So you see, when you talk in terms of how do the people take charge, how do they take control? The only thing we have right now are the media houses, the things we have, the media houses, the social media, to talk to government and government to talk to us. But the government is not even willing to engage us on the social media, because when they get beaten, when they see that they have no response to a particular agitation, what we are saying now is that, okay, keep quiet, they shut you down. It's unfortunate, but
we can't just give up, Mr. Loide.
No, we won't give up.
We can't just give up. You have said it. If people want to know anything, they go to the media and civil society organizations such as, SERAP that you mentioned. So, but even at that, even with the Freedom of Information law in place, getting information is always an arduous task. So, there has to be, let me put that to Mr. Lula. There has to be something that the people can do. And there are ways of engaging government, the people that were employed by the people,
by force,
to get to make sure that they give them, you talked about accountability and transparency the other time.
This still goes back to government, and I think it's not fair to say that to put it on the people. We've seen historical antecedent that shows they are where you read it. So it goes back to government. And the least I would expect in practical terms would be for the president to speak to the various reviews that have been done over time. And even if he wants to say this is wrong with it, but it can't just be forgotten. I think if he had said, okay, out of these 10 items, 2 is good to go, then we're looking at 8. At least it shows that historical trajectory that we have done this before. This is not enough. These are the things on the table.
Yeah.
But not to mention them makes it's just like you want to forget them and you want to engage the people. And then the practical terms. Why can't we have some sort of hybrid hearings if really government is interested in getting people to talk? See the way news trend on Twitter. This constitutional review did not trend the way it should. So why can't government?
Why do you think that? Why do you think that's the case?
Now, one is due to the distrust, and secondly, and most importantly, is government did not push it. There was no effort, really. I would call it. It's more of a charade, really. You can't see that willingness to push it, really. When you look at the way Mr. Lai Mohammed came out to speak about Twitter, have we seen him talk about the constitutional review that way? And then
the argument that's likely to come from that is it's something being done by the National Assembly, not the executive.
He's the Minister for Information.
We have separation of powers. We have that checks and balances. They work together. So it's something that should be done. And so it's on the government to bring forward the people, really.
Okay, Ayo, let's look at another angle to all of this. Okay, the constitution review is on at the moment. What should we be focusing on? What items should we be pushing that we want change to better our lives?
I think, in a way, I would challenge the idea that it is the Constitution that will better our lives. No, seriously, because it's been presented as though once the Constitution is amended, then everything will be
fall
okay.
into place.
That is not. The Constitution is the framework within which those who want to better your lives will struggle for political power to carry out their programs.
So the power is still in the, on their laps. To either
well,
do
it could
what
be our
should
laps.
make your
Anybody
life
can be a
better
politician.
or not.
Anybody who wants your vote is a politician. And the fact that we choose to vote for certain types of politicians rather than others, that is certainly at the door of we the people. But it doesn't mean to say that the door is closed. It's if you look at the turnout at the last election, you will see that there's a huge number of people who did not vote. I dare say that many of them were young people, but they didn't go out to vote, and they could be tapped to vote. So we shouldn't we should actually stop seeing that it's a bridge that we cannot, or a chasm, an unbridgeable chasm that we cannot cross. We can all join into the political game. We can be asked to be voted for, or we can vote. So I don't think that. But the point about a constitution, as you say, you can either look at it from the point of view of we're going to do a whole thing, in which case your focus is going to be on that section 9, the amendment or the alteration clause, that we want to alter it, and this is so that when the constitution is to be altered, these are the processes that will be followed. Constituent Assembly, referendum, or whatever it is. That will be where you concentrate all your effort. But what we've been doing is this piecemeal thing. That's why we're on our fourth alteration. And if you remember, the fourth alteration did not contain just one thing. It contained quite a few things. So we can continue. And then what you do is that, to me, I think we kind of paralyzed ourselves by using big words like restructuring. This is the legislative list. This one should be off it. This one should be off it. And so let's condescend upon the particular. In other words, let's be specific about what we want. I personally am not particularly bothered. But if Lagos State says we want special status, then that is a specific thing that we want. But when we start restructuring and so, then people, oh God, this is going to be a... And do you understand me? So I think that you either go big or you continue what we've been doing, which is the piecemeal adjustment, amendment. When the shoe pinches, we adjust it here. When it pinches there, we adjust it there. And this is how we go on. And that's really because we're never going to reach perfection.
But if I can ask you on that issue of go big, you've said it a couple of times here. Is there a legal framework or a legal provision for Nigeria to go big, so to speak?
Yeah, that's the point. So that you draft how you think the constitution amendment or alteration process should
allow.
be. But you have to pass through that needle's eye of section 9 of the constitution to get it done. But you see, if there is the political will, it can be done. If there's the national consensus, it can be done. But no effort is being made to build that consensus. Instead, the government is watching idly by while people, of course, some of them are jumping into the restructuring bus, not realizing that the person driving it is driving to a completely different destination, which may not end up with a country called Nigeria. Not the way that you want it.
That's like walking along a particular uranium.
Let's change the name of Nigeria.
But you get my point. That it is that because the word restructuring is all things to all men. For some people, it means that every zone should have the same number of states. For some, it means that we should have regions. And for some, it means that every state should have its own constitution. So it could mean anything. The government itself reviewed the issue of restructuring and so on. And they presented a report. Why didn't they run for election and say, we're now going to implement this report? That's why, as my colleagues, my learned friends here have said, that the people have a justified reaction of, oh yeah, tell me something new.
Interesting. Mr. Loide,
Yes.
I don't know if you share the same view or you want to make any adjustment to what she said, especially about, the certain specifics. Because it would seem like, on the one hand, you said it looks like a charade, it seems the three of you have a consensus on that. But speaking to specifics, it would seem like the term restructuring depends on what side of the bed you wake up on, or what part of the elephant you are feeling with your hand.
Yes. Well, the restructuring, like I said earlier, you have 10 lawyers in a room and you have a word to define. There will be 10 definitions of that word, possibly.
Is that why somebody said lawyers are the problem of the country?
We are not a problem, really. Because no country can do without lawyers. Now, when you're talking that, I want to take it from Izobe, the one about specifics, particularities. We need to be. There is nothing happening in this country today that you don't have a particular law or statute regulating it. It is about implementation. Let me take, for instance, the discourse, PHCN. I want to use a live example. There are laws regulating the relationship between energy providers and the people. Several times government had said, oh, there are enough meters, prepaid meters to go around. And yet, people are not getting them. Now, let me share a very personal experience on specifics. There is a law that says a particular client had an issue with, she did a case for 25 years. After getting judgment, recovering her property, 25 years. She died on the case. After recovering the property, the tenants were ejected, and we met bills of about 3 million, unpaid bills. And then we looked at the statute books. What do we do? Because NEPA says we cannot meter this house unless you clear the bill. Or the incoming tenants should pay up this bill before they can go. And I said, look, at some point in time, somebody must say no. So let's look at the law. And we looked at the law. It says the letter should be addressed to the particular area manager, the commercial manager. We did. They rejected the letter. They won't take it. Then the law says if they cannot solve the problem, you take it to NERC, that is Nigerian Energy, whatever.
Regulatory.
And we took a letter there that, okay, we're appealing the indecision of the lower body. The secretary, the receptionist rejected the letter. Then we sent DHL, and DHL gave us a report that says, oh, it was rejected. Now, there's a process stipulated by law, and the practitioners in that industry are refusing to comply with the law. Now, it is not about the constitution, like Ms. Obe said. It's not about constitution. Constitutional amendment is not going to change our life from the Nigerian reality to the uranium reality now. Nothing. It's not going to change. Because the laws that we have that are already on ground, the practitioners, those that are supposed to abide by those rules, are not abiding by them. The politicians are not abiding by the Constitution. Nigerians are not abiding by any rule. So, I'm just taking it up from where she left off. It is not about the particularities matter. When there's an infraction, Nigerians should begin to say, look, you must do it as prescribed by law.
The question is how? How do the people get that kind of message across?
For instance, there are...
sorry, my apologies. You just gave an instance now.
Yes, that is a real life case.
Yeah, I mean, you just gave an instance.
So how do you solve it?
Exactly.
No, it's not going to be inconclusive. I'm going to follow it through. We're on it. But we'll follow the process
after 25
through.
years.
That's the case in court. That's the court issue. But we followed the process through. We got judgment after 25 years, after most of the parties had died. Even the children had forgotten about the case. So it is about following through. When the policeman stops you, you have all your papers correct. The Nigerian is always in a hurry. So they say, okay, park. He parks. Show me your papers. He shows his papers. And then the next minute, he says, well, there you have a tinted glass. I have a permit. He says, oh, but the permit does not bear your name. Is the permit about you, about the car? And then the Nigerian says, oh, officer, I'm in a hurry. Can I just, please help your brother? And then he tips the officer, breaking the law. Why are we always in a hurry to know where? We also embellish this tragicomedy that is Nigeria.
Mr. Luminary.
To speak to specifics, we can start from chapter 2. Now, I wouldn't want to speak about whether it's possible or not. We can start with chapter 2, for instance, making it justiciable, enforcing those laws. So whether the political issues of resource control or state police or devolution of power to the states succeed, then that can be transposed down to the states. And then most importantly, transparency and accountability mechanisms. A very good case in point, the Office of the Auditor General, which I believe has been doing well in Nigeria over the years. Can we have that office strengthened too? And so we need to keep making that contribution, even when the politicians are talking about the political aspects of the Constitution, so that when the states do have these powers that they want to have, or the politicians have it, we have these mechanisms that can guide them. Those are the things.
That's where I have a problem. Okay, so we know that the Auditor General's office has a duty every year to audit the federal government of Nigeria's accounts. That is done. And I think I can reference the Auditor General's report since 2014 till, was it 2018?
2018, yeah.
And every single one of those reports, I mean, if we were to calculate all the money that's supposed to have been paid back, we'll settle our budgets for like a year or two, and nothing has been done about that until now. In fact, there is the last of the audit. I think it was Serap that also did a report on that one. Yeah, okay. That one of the main offenders, if I can use the term, of that, you know, in the Auditor General's report is the Federal Ministry of Justice. So how then do we, you know, enforce? What are the things that we need to do? What structures are there that are not there? The laws are there, just as, you know, the three of you have said. The laws are there to make sure that things are done properly, and those things are not being done. So where do we go? How do we, you know, ensure that the systems work? Because as you have said, there are those who also argue that even if you have a perfect constitution, will you have perfect compliance?
This brings us back to political will. Unfortunately, political will cannot be either discussed or legislated upon, really. It's just
does it even have a definition?
Political will is the willingness, I'll call it that, of those who hold power. It need not even be elected positions. They might be appointed positions too, to give effect to the rules and regulations. Unfortunately, it can't be legislated. It's only the people that can demand through legal means for political will to be brought to bear on the laws.
So does that mean then, I asked you this question the other time, Mr. Loide, does that mean this process is dead on arrival? This constitutional
the amendment?
Yes.
I think so.
Oh dear.
That's my short answer. It's about the coming elections. There's nothing more to it. After the elections, it will be thrashed.
Okay, Ayo, what do you think?
I don't think, I mean, unless there are some specific issues that are being proposed, but the overall something they don't.
One of the things,
General-
one of the main specifics, if we could go there, that people are talking about is to depopulate the executive legislative
exclusive
list.
The exclusive legislative, yes. If there are
Implicate.
specific proposals to that regard, then that can happen. But do you see that happening from this National Assembly? I'm not holding my breath. I'm really not holding my breath. And I also would say that even though the governors have been flexing their muscles and talking about what they want, when push comes to shove, you have not seen their own, apart from this Lagos State proposal, which is about we want more power and special something. We haven't really seen that, I don't even want to call it a grassroots effort at involvement of the people, as they've both said. Government agencies that should fire us up about it are not interested in firing us up about it. And the National Assembly itself, well, thank God I saw it on Twitter.
Which one? Yesterday?
The Senate's
I'm asking-
announcement that it was...
I'm asking which Twitter? Was it before the ban?
No, when they were going to have their public hearings,
yeah.
I saw the announcement
Before
on
the
Twitter.
ban. BTB.
Before let's call it the suspension.
Before
So
the
we have
suspension.
post-ban, pre-ban, post-ban.
Pre-ban, post-ban. Oh, God.
Just like a pandemic.
Well,
Not post-VPN.
well, the conversation is not just going to go away, but the perspectives that you have added to the conversation this morning, I believe, has given a lot more people better understanding of what this whole thing is about. So we have to thank you very much for being a part of the conversation. Mr. Ayobe is a legal practitioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, Mr. John Oloyede, thank you also.
My pleasure,
for your time.
always.
As well as Kola Wole Oluwadare, who is Deputy Director, Socio-Economic Rights